evening and welcome to the August 21st edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin Dowe and I'll be serving as your host. First of all, thank you for joining us. I'm almost tempted to say welcome back because we've been in a 2-week hiatus because of the Emancipation Day commemoration and of course Spicemas 2023. And in speaking of Spicemas 2023, that will be our theme for this evening. So wherever you're joining us from, GBN Television, GBN Radio, on any of our social media platforms, thank you for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure. And with me in studio, he needs no introduction. At the end of a season, everyone knows this gentleman's face, the Chief Executive Officer of the Spicemas Corporation, Mr. Cecil Noel. Cecil, welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Thanks, Colin, and thanks for being back again. I mean, as you say, it's no, real serious introduction. Been there, done it, and we continue to do it. But again, a very pleasant evening to our listeners and viewers, and thanks for having me on. And let me just start off by saying thanks to the Grenadian public and all our visitors who came in for Spicemas. I think overall, we did an excellent job. Thanks to everyone who participated, whether in playing or spectating. I think it was well done.
Well, I just need to find out whether or not you have gotten a good night's sleep as yet. But the phone stopped ringing and you actually...
the good night's sleep, not quite yet. The rest hasn't really come as I would like it to. But the phone calls, it ease up a bit. But listen it's all part of the role. And I mean, when you put yourself out to serve and you really want to do it well, it's part of the territory you have to be facing. So
excellent.
There we go.
All right. So overall, just tell us, this is year one. This is your first carnival as CEO.
Yeah.
So reflect a little bit on what are your thoughts of Spicemas 2023 from the CEO perspective now.
Well, before I even give you those thoughts, I will also take the opportunity to just say a hearty congratulations to all the winners of Spicemas 2023. I think for all parts, they did an excellent job and they deserve, what the rewards are. Overall, I would say I'm calling Spicemas 23 was a resounding success. And my reason for saying that, I mean, it's easy to just look at it from the number of people I was there and say, it was a lot of people, and we could always say that. But the truth is that from where I sit as CEO, when I got into office, as far as I'm concerned, in order to determine whether or not it's going to be successful, there was some benchmark and some measuring sticks that was set. And I must say at this stage that they were all met, and in some cases overwhelmingly so. So for example, one of the mandate of the board was to ensure that traditional mass was elevated this year in 2023. So a lot of groundwork was being done, even working along in conjunction with the Cultural Foundation and Livingston Nelson. We made it our trust to really go there and reach out to the traditional mass band and the leaders, wherever they were in the village. We didn't ask them to come to us. And we did a number of work documenting what's going on with them, finding out the situation. And the whole idea behind all of this is that we see our traditional mass as one of the key components of what makes Spicemas unique. And we thought it extremely important to work with this grouping to ensure, one, that they're sustained, because for most part we saw it in some cases as dwindling, as dying. I wouldn't say it altogether as thing, but the numbers were just getting smaller, and we thought it's extremely important to reach out to these folks and to work with them to ensure that they maintain what they're doing, and more so to try to get additional people, especially young people, involved in that aspect of our culture and our heritage. And I must say, for most part, that went well. If you ask me how I want to measure the success of that, I tell you this in Mark's Traditional Mass Festival, done along with Grenlec. And let me take the opportunity to say a big thank you to Grenlec specifically for that, because they have really come on board over the years and they continue to reach out and do an excellent job. And this year, I would say for the first time, and I know sometimes when comments like these are made, they sometimes get challenged. But from all indication and from the reports of people who were there, as I said, it was the first time they see such a massive turnout, both of the traditional mass band participating, as well as the size of the bands. So as I recall it, I think it was 21 bands altogether participated this year. And so much so, when I saw people from all over Grenada, you look at the streets in St. Mark's, and there basically weren't any way to fit people anymore. And for most part, people were saying, hey, congrats, well done, but something needs to be addressed to be done differently next year, because that cluster of people on Hero Square, there just wasn't sufficient space for everything to be done and done as we would like it. So again, that is a serious measurement, and I think we did exceedingly well there. So in terms of the mass band, the size of the band, and the support from the spectators, it was really phenomenal.
Okay.
You know, one of the other things that we seriously decided we were going to tackle head on is a question of time. We have heard so many complaints with respect to start times for shows, whether were the shows that are held at specific venue, Progress Park or the stadium, or what happened on the road. And we made that very conscious effort to ensure that we improve on that. And for most part, as I recall it, just about all the events started when they were supposed to. Again, so we take the credit as a board, as a staff. It was serious work to get that done. I mean, and we could break it down to be more specific. I know, for example, when we spoke out that Juve was going to start and end on time, I sometimes got a feel from some people like, hey, y'all just saying that, but that wouldn't happen. But the truth is, when 5, things were rolling, and when 9:30, the caller was already there, music already shut down, and people started to move home. You know, I remember one of the guys passing and say, hey, you're shortening our Juve, and my word to him was, don't worry, next year you'll get a little longer. We'll try to start earlier. You know, but I think for most part, people, and I want to give a lot of credit to the public. I think we try our best to promote what we want to do, and for most part, I think they worked with us, because the truth is we could not have done it on our own. Right. We could have preached as much as we wanted, but we had the full support. Or should I say, for most part, we had great support from the general public. We had the support from the Royal Grenada Police Force. And all in all, you know, I think things went well. Whether it was Juve, the pageant, Monday Night Mass, and yes, there was some little teething problem, but Monday Night Mass actually kicked off 8:15. And I think it's some of the things we still need to review, maybe the route in terms of how long they take to get up to the main viewing area, which is that of Carnegie James Boulevard. But we really did well in terms of time. And one of the other things that we really look forward to, so for example, we went off as a group to New York to promote it and to be there with the launch in New York. Similarly, working along with the Grenada Tourism Authority, we also went to our neighbor sister Trinidad and did a number of promotion. So one of the things we were really looking forward to was to see that increase in numbers in terms of both participation, let's say in the mass band, or coming along to see what happened in terms of spectatorship. And I'm very much satisfied that we achieved those.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said the support and increase in visibility for traditional mass. Yeah. I would say respect for patrons with on-time starts. Yes. And your marketing initiatives were the 3 things that you highlighted in coming into Spicemas 2023. Yeah. And you would say yes, yes, yes.
I would say yes, yes, yes.
Excellent. Is there anything that you'd want to single out, in addition to, or just to elaborate on what you have mentioned, that you're particularly proud of in year 1?
Well, we started off with our launch in April. And I think when we had that launch, it kind of gave a clear indication of what was to follow. Because if I may say this here, I came into office, the announcement was made, and there just seemed to have been a lot of hype in terms of interest all wrong. And I mean, that in itself kind of added a little kind of pressure to the whole feel of getting in there. But what it also did was to send that signal that here, people are behind the board, the staff, and we need to make sure that whatever we do, they're satisfied. So when we had that launch in April, it was a bumper success. In terms of the numbers, in terms of the performances, we were able again to attract the same traditional mass to come through. And we had things like the casting call for queens, and that kind of paved the way for a lot that follow. In particular, I would say one of the things that really stand out for me is the whole question of how we went about marketing a lot of the events. We did a lot of work on social media in terms of reaching out to people, and I will tell you straight out, Colin, sometimes people feel, as I remember somebody saying, why you feel you have to listen to everybody who want to talk to you? And I said to them, because that's what's going to make the difference. The reason why I'm saying that, I think part of our promotional strategy this year came as a result of talking to several people, especially young people. Mm-hmm. I still recall, a few young people meeting me and saying, hey, this is what I feel should happen. This is how they think it should happen. And I think we did a really great job in terms of marketing the events. At one point, I know we were doing the series of just sending out information on a weekly basis on the Queen pageant, on the contestants. We did similar after going to the villages with traditional mass. We did the same, and as it came down, we went to the pan houses and we interviewed people and we get them out. We were able to attract some of the Calypsonians and soca artists to do little blogs, little things for us. So I think the marketing and promotional aspect of it was also really exceptionally done.
You mentioned one of the things was the marketing again. So let's go outside. Any estimates on the number of visitors that we had?
Not conclusive, but I can tell you I did some research. For example, prior to this year, we had approximately, coming out of Trinidad, it used to be just under 2,000. Mm-hmm. And from the indications, even from visiting there, I'm certain that we would have gone over that. I am yet to receive those information. What I will do is get that from the Tourism Authority, mm-hmm. as well as for the other destinations. In total, the figures were, prior to this year, approximately, I think, 18,000 coming in, somewhere around that figure. And I'm almost certain, based on what I saw on the road, that it was, in fact, a lot more than that. I might be jumping the gun, but even based on some of the initiatives, again, with the GTA, we had approximately 28 media personnel coming in from different places globally. Some of the top magazines, the Essence, the Vogue, and so forth. And from the reviews, some of which I have read thus far, it only means that what I'm seeing, I expect to see even larger numbers again next year.
Well, that's going to be my question, whether, the efforts of this year, typically you do marketing for immediate,
yes.
You market for the future.
That's correct.
So if we've had this type of success in 2023, one can anticipate even greater crowds coming in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah. And that's the expectation. I mean, if we go back even to the theme for this year, the evolution, I had to keep reminding my listeners or viewers when I get a chance to interact, such as I'm doing tonight, is that the evolution was never meant to be 2023 and end there. It always was meant to be something that is going to evolve over time. And there are a number of things that we're looking at as we think of the evolution. Yes, there are certain things that need to fix, need to change. But generally speaking, the evolution will speak to a lot of things, including policies. One of the serious challenges we face with at Spicemas, as you would know, I mean, we work together as well, is the financial aspect. But the truth is that we talk about the numbers in terms of the amount of people that visit. We know the revenues generated. We know where the revenues are generated. But those revenues do not come directly to Spicemas. So we usually find ourselves in that hole, where we're trying to make sure that we're able to pay all our bills without any challenges. And one of the things that we're looking at as part of the evolution is to have some policies in place whereby the places where the revenues are really generated, that they see the need to be able to give back one way another. It could be some kind of tax, maybe some head tax, some festival tax, or something like that. But we are seriously looking in terms of what can be done from a financial perspective to ensure that Spicemas can survive financially.
Let's just take on the marketing. So do you believe that the largest source market would have been Trinidad, or would you anticipate it would have been Grenadians returning, which typically would be the largest number? And if returning, where would you anticipate us coming from? Is it New York? Is it Toronto? Is it coming down from London? Because I know we had visitors from all over.
Yes. No, but I believe it's from New York. And yes, I think it's a matter of our returning nationals. Although, somebody actually hinted to me that a lot of the people you just see coming in for Spicemas, they didn't see this year. And I also recall when I was in New York that a lot of them were actually planning to come in for the 50th anniversary. For whatever reason, there seemed to be a hype on that. I know we're talking Spicemas, but there is some synergy in all of this in terms of the marketing. But I do believe that we would have topped and increased our numbers from Trinidad. For whatever reason, the Trinidadians, they really seem to like our kind of when I went down there, I did a number of interviews on several radio and television stations, and the truth is that talking about Spicemas was like feeling as if you're back home, because they're so enthused and so in tune with what's going on here. A number of them actually indicated that sometimes they come just for Juve and go back.
Right.
So it tells a story that there's something we're doing that is good, but I don't think we should become complacent with that, because I do believe that even as I talk about a Juve, there's certain things we need to do to try to fix it.
Okay, so let's get into mass now, because we're going to just deal with the three main components: mass, pan, calypso, in that order. So let's deal with mass, and let's just start off with fancy mass. What in your mind was the standout aspect of mass in Grenada this year?
Ooh. I would say the number of bands. I would definitely say the number of bands, but again, we talk about the standout as one thing, but I would have really preferred if that standout happened in a manner that was more, let me say, appealing, and I'll be more specific in what I mean. Take, for example, Tuesday. I still believe, even from what I conceptualized as a child going to town and seeing the parade of the bands, there is nothing to beat that spectacle of all those colors glittering in the sun. And in as much as I say I saw the bands were big and that was good, but I think it would have been a lot more appealing and satisfying if we had those bands on the road displaying their splendor, displaying the color under the sun. And it's one of the areas I hope we can fix going forward, because what we need to be mindful of is, for spectators, their satisfaction is paramount. And it cannot just be a case that when we play the mass, that we almost play it for ourselves. Because part of what I even noticed, like the Monday, you'll have a few people coming out and they don't quite come out in the full regalia, and then they come on Tuesday. So I think, as I said, it was a lot of bands. There were big bands. How
many bands were there?
There were approximately 16 of the bands.
16 fancy mass bands?
Yes, we had a combination of what can be considered the local or the smaller bands, and then we have some of the bigger bands,
Let me get into that a little bit, because I think in the release I saw coming from SMC, I was a little bit puzzled, and I use that term, loosely. There were definitions of large bands and small bands, and what I saw was traditional bands being defined as small bands, and some of the newer bands as large bands. Who defined? How was it defined?
Good question. And I'm not sure why they would have why the traditional was actually defined in that way, because we try to keep traditional as traditional.
And I'm not talking, when I say traditional, I'm talking Andre Garvey and Associates, Comancheros, you know, and those traditional fancy mass bands.
I get it.
Labeled small bands. And then the Oro and others as large bands.
That's correct.
And I wonder how did we define small and large? And was that truthful when we looked at mass players and masqueraders with behind those banners on the road?
To some extent, I would say yes. But again, if you look at it close, you may want to say no, and I will try to explain it. But I mean, you raise the point, and to be quite honest, I try to get away from that quote-unquote distinction, because somehow I don't think it is quite correct. And I think it's something that we need to fix. We need to fix it in terms of the bands and the association, in terms of having some proper representation in terms of the bands, having bands duly registered and so forth. But having said all of that, yes, I came on board, and I myself was a bit puzzled when I came in a few months ago and heard it being discussing in those manner. As a matter of fact, and sometimes you hear it as foreign ban and local ban as well. You know, so as I said, it's something that we need to seriously address and see our bans as our bans. But in terms of the number and definition, there are different because there were some bans that were like under 100, some of them under 200. You know, in terms of number and size, that's how we define them. But there were bands as much as 1,500. You know, so bands like those would have been seen and considered large bands. So for most part, that's how we go. But I think that label of just calling the traditional bands, as you refer to them, that we know as small band, is not quite true, because I saw some of the bands and I find the numbers to me look relatively more than just small.
That was my observation as well.
Yes.
For the last 2 years, and I believe it's for the last 2 years since post-COVID, there has not been a king and queen of the band competition. Why is that?
I can't give you all answers for prior to my entry, but I know in coming in there was some challenges with respect to the Mass Band Association, and the truth is, when you check the rules that define how the competition should be run, it means that the association really needs to be in place, because the bands need to be duly registered. There need to be a certain number of quota of bands registered to participate for that to happen. So there were a lot of discussion, or I should just say there were discussions around that, and at the end of the day it was decided that we need to try to work to get the association to get its house in order, first and foremost. But I can tell you, we have already started planning with the hope that things will be fixed, and that will return next year.
Okay, so is that also, my understanding as well is that there was not a band of the year adjudication process for the Monday Monday pageant and Tuesday. Is that correct? And is that the same reason, the dysfunctionality of the Mass Band Association that caused this?
But I think for most part, if I may say it, I think the dysfunctionality of the association for most part would have caused it. Because even while I was there at one point, when the questions were being asked of who are the people that probably are in preparation to be able to do competition, we were told 3. Now, by virtue of that number, if I'm not mistaken, what the guidelines said is that there must be, I think, more than 4 bands to be able to have a competition, right? Thereafter, we started hearing that some of the other bands were saying they were prepared. But
let me ask you this: who runs the competition? Does Spicemas has rules and regulations governing the competitions for mass, or are you dependent upon the Mass Band Association to provide you with the rules for mass? I mean, because if you had the number of bands that you had on the road, you certainly had more than 4 bands on the road, so there should be no reason why you could not adjudicate a band of the year.
But the bands on the road, all of the bands on the road were not interested in participating. And for most part, as I said, from the information originally gathered, the among that that work were less than what was required, if you want to call it, to form a quorum for such a competition. But what I know, we have been preaching to all the bands, and we had several meetings at different points, and the intention is to have competition return next year. And we want to have, if not all bands registered and competing, most of the bands.
Let me ask this. Did the band receive subvention? I know traditionally the bands would receive subventions, and that typically would be paid through the Mass Band Association. Was there subventions given to mass bands or no?
Subvention were given to mass band, and again, they were given to quote-unquote what you will consider the local mass bands.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, and what was the qualifiers, just so that we're aware?
I wish I could say all what the qualifiers were. I think it's more, from where I sit, it's more of something that is seen as traditional, happened in the past, lending the supporter. But I can tell you, both from a board standpoint, it was discussed, and there are some finality with respect to going forward what happened, because it was agreed that bands who are in existence for 5, 10, 15 years really should not be dependent on subvention to continue. The whole question of subvention, it was discussed and agreed that new bands coming on, needing assistance, subvention will be given to them. So the truth is, unless something else drastically happens, based on what has been discussed, subvention is not going to be handed out the same way going forward in 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And just in terms of what were the expectations of the bands? I mean, was there, this is what we expect the rollout to be. So you're going to get a subvention. This is what you're expected to give in order to receive the subvention, or was it a case that you have traditionally gotten X amount, so we maintain in 2023, and then the board say from 2024 we'll have to move forward in a different way?
Well, it's two ways. What you say is correct. It was happening and it continued, but the truth is, part of what the board expect, and in some cases it has not really happened, is the way that people account for the subvention, and that in itself has created some challenge. And I know not just now, since I was in the association in Spicemas years ago, there were always some contentious issues in terms of how people account for the subvention. Because the truth is that when the subvention is given out, there's supposed to be some accounting principles to follow in terms of how you spend the money to be able to report back to the board, and you are only supposed to be receiving subvention for the present year based on how you account for the past year, right? And as I understand it, and there seem to be some abnormalities, if I may put it that way, in terms of how it happened. So even taking those into consideration, the board really has taken a decision that new bands coming on stream, bands who may be a year, 2 years old, needing help, will receive that assistance. But going forward, bands who are quote-unquote established should be able to stand on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that we heard, just speaking now of Parade of Bands, was the non-presence of bands on the Carnage, the picturesque harbor of the Carnage, and the bands not getting onto the Carnage. What was responsible for that, and did you believe this took away from the spectacle that really is Spicemas?
It must have taken away from the spectacle. I remember in Trinidad doing a presentation, and in my presentation I actually spoke of that beautiful backdrop when the bands move across and the sun glitters, and it made me feel, for example, hey, I was selling something and it didn't quite happen, right. But to answer you, and first of all, I want to start by being really sympathetic, especially to the vendors who were on the Carnage. And I mean, and there are different reasons and different things being said, but we are very assured that when we issue or said that mass band is going to be there, that was our expectations. Mm-hmm. But it is something that is a lot deeper than that. I recall, for example, on Monday, while I'm on the road assisting with the marshalling to get the bands moving, and I'm saying to my band, remember, you all have to go on the Carnage, because we took upon ourselves to indicate that to them once they can go. that they should go. And when I say ones they can go, some of them were already telling us because of the size of the trucks that they're using, it will be difficult. And case in point, I remember saying that to one of the bands that were in front on Monday, and the response I get is that we won't be able to go on the carnage. We're not going over there, because if we go over there, we'll have problem to turn to go back down to get ready for Monday night mass. Now, what I'm saying, these are some of the challenges we face with, and from all indication, this was the main reason why there were not much of the bands going over there. And I say much.
This is a logistical issue, which is something that we all should have anticipated. The 40-foot flatbed is something that came in, and I remember very well when it came in. I know the first band that brought it in, so I'm very familiar with that. But the idea really is, we know that there was a problem in terms of those flatbeds turning. So are we at a stage where either we get rid of the 40-foot flatbeds or we change the route?
And that's a problem, because, and in all honesty, we had the discussions with the mass bands, and there's no denying it. And we explained that based on what we've seen happening, based on our roads, our curve, the size of the roads, the size of the bands, that the most we think should be allowed is one. But lo and behold, what we saw was several. I hope at this stage it's going to be an early enough plea to ask people to understand how it impacts the whole flow of things for Carnival. Because when we have the vendors, for example, complaining of not doing well because bands didn't really come over on the carnage, it's something that must be addressed and should not be taken lightly or for granted. But as you correctly said, the options to that would be to change the route. But I know, even from when you were there, when we were there before, trying to change the route is easier said than done, because there's so many. In other words, where do we go from here? Do we go down south? When we go down south, how does that impact what happened down south, especially things like the route to the airport, even if we have the back road? So there are challenges, but of course the discussion must be had. But just to answer the question, for most part, the challenges that were faced with our bands not going on the carnage this year was and remained to be that challenge of the size of those trailer trucks not wanting to go over there. And as much as we encourage people to go over there because we know that it's important that it happen for various reasons, it did happen.
Okay, I hope it's not a case of the tail wagging the dog in that instance, where it's the drivers making the determination of the carnival route as opposed to the SMC. Viewers, we're talking Spicemas, we're reviewing Spicemas 2023 with the CEO, Mr. Cecil Noel. It's time for a first break. We'll take that and be right back.
About the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
RENDEC Community Partnership Initiative.
The classrooms that were refurbished as a result of this project really were not conducive to installing ICT into the classroom. Many of the windows were not functional. The security to the actual rooms themselves were insufficient. At the Maribor campus, the roof was also termite infested. The college is extremely appreciative of the contribution of GRENLEC to this project to really enhance learning through the use of information and communications technology.
Ministry of Tourism and Economic Development and the Grenada Tourism Authority extend a warm welcome to visitors and returning nationals visiting for Carnival and summer vacation. We do hope you enjoy your stay with us, and we invite you to return with friends and family to celebrate our 50th anniversary of independence on 7th February 2024. Tourism is my business, your business, our business.
Welcome back, viewers. We're talking Spicemas 2023 with the CEO, Mr. Cecil Noel. We started talking mass. We have to get to Pan, we have to get to Calypso, but I can't leave mass without specifically zoning in on traditional mass. Can you give us an approximation as to the number of traditional mass bands that we had participating in Spicemas 2023, as well as the categories that were there?
Well, as I recall, from a total, as a package, we had approximately 21 traditional mass bands. Okay.
Yeah. And they reflected
I don't have the specific count, but whether it was a vehicle, the shortney, we had the Moko Jumbi, we had the Wild Indians, we had even a couple of Maypole. So we had, I think for most part, we had a little of every. But part, as you mentioned that, some of what came up, things like the donkey mass, I remember that being mentioned, and we were really trying to see if we could get that back. That didn't quite happen. But as I say, there are a few of them that apparently there isn't much of them around, but we're hoping we could get those back. But for most part, I think traditional mass, I think it's up on the rise.
Let me ask you this, because sometimes some people say pay for what you want. You highlighted that one of the focal points of Spicemas 2023 as determined by the board and the office was traditional mass.
Yes.
What type of prize monies were awarded to traditional mass bands? What type of subvention was given? Because they would need seed money. If you were trying to grow the mass, you would need seed money, one, for development, and two, certainly as an incentive by way of the competition. So both subvention as well as prize monies. Any idea?
Yes, yeah, I could give you an idea, but I'll be telling you almost, I think, and I would start by saying it this way as a preamble to the thing. I think we really need to do better to put our money where our mouth is. And what I mean by that, the subvention for traditional mass, in my opinion, was still a small sum. I can tell you it's going to be increased. The actual prize money, and again, I take the opportunity to say thanks to Grenlec, because only today, in conversation with one of the senior reps there, I won't call name, when I explained to them what we were doing and what we like to do for traditional mass, they were so happy to give us some additional funds to make sure that the prize monies for traditional mass is increased. So I don't know what it was, let's say 5-6 years ago, but I can tell you, I believe for the first time traditional mass will receive what I consider a relatively fair deal. So we're going to give the winner, I think it's $7,000. And I'm saying that because it was nowhere close to that in the past. It was nowhere close to the past. So we'll have, I think it's 754. And don't quote me, because this is a discussion only today I had with Grenlec, who are willing to give some additional funds to ensure that the traditional mass band get more than what they got in the past.
Is this for the traditional mass festival, or this was for the parade of the bands?
No, what we did in terms of judging for traditional mass band, we did that judging at the festival, since we were able to attract that large number of bands. So those prize money will go towards the winners of the traditional
So the only adjudication for traditional mass was at Victoria?
That's correct.
Okay.
The other judging that was done was, in terms of what we consider traditional mass, was really for the whole mass.
Okay.
We did that, like for some of the individuals, that took place on Tuesday morning. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, because we were hoping we could get the traditional mass to come in larger number in a more organized way for Monday and Tuesday, although they came, it didn't quite work out to be as we wanted.
But let me ask you this, because one of the things I observed is that when we saw a rollout of what was going to take place on Monday and Tuesday, I saw a route for Juve, I saw a route for pageant for Monday night mass for Tuesday. I saw bands in terms of positions for Monday and Tuesday fancy mass bands as well as Monday night mass. But there was no reference to traditional mass for Monday and Tuesday.
Well, and the truth is that we made allowance for that. And that was communicated to the traditional mass band. But the fact that you're saying that, I guess, is something we could have done better with. Because in the case of the traditional mass band, their route, they started at Burns Point and they move on to the Carnage.
Okay.
And that was the route, and we had
that was Tuesday or that was
Monday? That was Monday morning.
Monday morning during
like Juve.
Oh, that's Juve. So
yeah, for Juve.
I'm making a distinction here.
Yeah.
So when we speak of traditional mass bands, I'm leaving Jab out.
Yes.
All right.
That's correct.
Right.
Yes.
So we had during Juve, Shortney and Veco expected.
And Old Mass, yes, and they're supposed to started at Burns Point and move along the Carnage. Whereas what we did was allow the Jab and the other bands to go further down and then come up. It was organized in such a manner that the quote-unquote traditional mass band, as you know, they don't need the hi-fi music. Right. They use their own chanting and drumming and so it was organized in a manner that they would have sufficient time from Burns Point to go across the Carnage before the hi-fi music and the jab and so come into play.
Is it traditional though to have the Shortney and Veco out at 5 a.m. but rather see them around the pageant time on a Monday and certainly on Tuesday, but this didn't seem to be structured based on the release from SMC with the parade of the bands and what could have been expected?
So I'll explain that. First of all, with respect to the timing, for the traditional mass and their route from Burns Point, that was around from 5:30, 6 when it got a little bright, because we expected that they need to be seen. So they were not expected to be there like 4:30, 5 o'clock really. And again, that was clearly communicated, and that is what happened. So they started at that time, and we...
Was there a good showing?
I was not there, I'll be honest, but from all indication, they were there. How good the showing was, I mean, I asked questions, but it's something that...
Because I saw pictures, I played my traditional mass, all right? So I was one of those that you said I need to start further back.
Yes.
All right, so I would not have seen who started at Burns Point. But I did see pictures of the old mass crowd, and they need to have their space, that's without a doubt. Yeah. But I don't recall seeing any pictures of the other traditional mass forms, in what was captured. Okay. Just speaking about traditional mass, one of the comments made about the traditional mass festival was that it seemed to have outgrown Hero Square. Is there any conversations, especially if there's going to be additional investment by your title sponsor, Grenlec, and by the number of bands, the emphasis on traditional mass, and the patrons who turned out, along with having the Sunset City food vendors on the street? All of it can't happen in Victoria. It really not, because it seemed to have compromised the bands themselves, because there was so little movement, and then they had to stop and wait because a band was crossing on Hero Square. It almost took away the momentum. What are your thoughts on?
No, it has definitely outgrown, especially Hero Square. And I'll tell you why I'm saying Hero Square, because some of the thought process right now is that as opposed to just letting the bands make that parade around on the streets and then come to Hero Square where everything seemed to be centered, is that one, we probably spread it out and have even the judges and the the spectators be along the entire route. Because I'm telling you, the truth is that the amount of people that was there this year is absolutely no way it can be allowed to go that way. So part of what we're looking at is to have it spread out along the entire route. You leave from Hero Square, you go around and you come around. So you have the judges on the streets.
And it's okay for short knee and vehicle to start from Wall Terminal by the school. That's fine.
Yeah.
Because that's a short jump. So unlike other masqueraders who want a short jump, wanting a short knee and vehicle, they don't mind a long route.
Yeah. So it's not placed in stone, but it is part of what we think about at least for next year. And I tell you why. In as much as people say it has outgrown, in some cases, Victoria, I think we still need to remember and keep some level of sanity in terms of how the people in the outer parish view it. They see it as their own, right?
Notice I did two things.
Yeah.
I said outgrown Hero Square.
That's correct.
I didn't say outgrown Victoria.
And that's the thing about it, because we're really thinking of keeping it there, but doing it in a different way, where it actually spread out a bit more.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking at.
Juve is a signature event of Grenada. You mentioned people saying they're flying up from Trinidad, just Juve and go back down. Is it time that we try to bring some order to the chaos and have, it seems to be, while it is our signature event, it seems to unfold, I wouldn't want to say in a chaotic manner, but not produced as well as we probably can. I mean, Juve Morning is supposed to have some level of rebellion. That's what the nature of it. But it doesn't mean that it can't be a loose structure.
No, it should also have some structure, and that's the point I'm going to make. And the truth is that we need to get a grip of this, because if we don't, what's going to happen is just going to be like a big street party. And I'm saying that in a context, when you look at what happened this year, apart from a few real jab trying to organize themselves, and almost you could see them almost being frustrated and trying to do that, it was just a massive crowd of people who just want to be.
But did we have bands? And if we had bands, how many bands were there?
No. If I sit here and tell you we had bands, I'll be lying.
Okay. So we had
that's supposed to happen. I think it was just one
dirty
thing.
People in town, and then
that's the
individual jabs.
It seemed that for most part, people just wanted to get a little dirt, whether it was from colored or from the jab, and just be all mingling. And I really think we need to put some structure and order to that. Because the jab, when you look at the jab in itself, it could be a beautiful sight when it's properly done. But when you have everybody just wanting to jump in among the jab and just one big lump, it doesn't work. And I know in the past we had some of the community groups, Vincent, in some cases St. Paul's, other groups that will come out with organized Juve bands. I didn't really see much of that this year. So in as much as we talk about how successful it is, I do believe in terms of structure and organization, these are some of the things that need to happen. And I'm not saying it's easy to be done, but I'm saying it needs to be done.
Was there registration for Juve bands on coming onto the street with the hi-fi sound, etc.?
The requests were made, but there were very little of that taking place.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And how do you believe we can go about incentivizing better structure so that there is a good rollout and there is some format? And okay, so I'm biased with the black jab, but I do recognize that some people do green, they do yellow, they do blue, they do silver. And how can we incentivize that there is that structure as we see the full rollout on a Monday morning?
Well, in terms of incentivizing, I think it will have to do with, again, trying to have some format whereby the bands can be judged. I think that would help people to try to...
So there was no judging of bands this year?
No.
There were none? Okay.
No. Right? So that is one of the aspects. But part of what I think also need to be done, and it's something that we actually started a few months ago, is to try to have some discussion, especially with the leaders of the jab ban. Because I think if we are able to do that and have them understand the importance of some form of structure and organization, it would work. I know, for example, one of the leaders, when that was discussed with him, he said, you know, he tried to get other people to do it, some of the other jab ban leaders, but it's, for some reason, it seems to be a challenge in itself in terms of the organization. People seem to think it's okay to just come on the street, you know, you do your job, have fun.
Is it the fact that leaders are seen as commercializing jab, and jab is for the people? So in other words, you're trying to sell me a package for $30, $40 when quote unquote oil is free and everybody could burn a bag of
and charcoal, yes, right? Yes.
And maybe, you know, with the assistance of SMC, should we look to get these bands sponsorships so that the elements of the jab can be provided to patrons, and therefore we can have more uniformity? I'm just putting it out there.
No, but it makes sense, because it's part of the discussion we actually had with one of the jab leader. You know, he spoke about the fact that we have, if may I say, revolutionized the way jab is not, for most part, it's not the same oil that we use in the past. And we had a discussion, hey, so why don't you process your pigment, whatever it is you use in the charcoal or with your baby oil, and put that in packages? We'll help you promote it, we'll help you sell it. And I think these are some of the discussions that will help them to see the need to get better organized. The question of sponsorship, a number of them were making, you know, the whole analogy of without sponsors, it's difficult to be really organized as you want. But these are some of the things that definitely need to be addressed. And again, I would take the opportunity to do two things. One, to ask, and I know I'm being a lot specific, especially with the jab leaders, to please try to get your jab bands better organized. Let them understand that this is not just about playing jab. It's about letting it be more of a cultural something, a heritage something, a historic something, something that would bring meaning to who is the people playing as well as the people spectating.
So let me just interrupt you here. It therefore means that we need to document the history and traditions, the origins and meanings of our traditional mass art forms.
Yeah.
Jab, yes, but short knee, the Veco, the wild Indian, the maypole, etc. So that this can be something that is passed on. So, and a youngster don't necessarily just get dirty and come in town.
No.
But they understand the source.
And the educational aspect of it. And it is where we want to go. For example, we were able to do a couple I would say short documentaries, and we were able to have them posted. So we had, you would see the Veco, you would see the short knee, and we have these narratives on it written up, as well as the jab. And the whole intent when that was done is that people would better understand why these people do what they do, how they do it, even how they make their clogs. You know, all of these, we try to document it. And it's a whole educational process, because we think if the educational process is in place, the structure will follow.
Right.
We think the structure will follow.
Okay. Just quickly, I need to get on to Pan. So just a short answer. Were you happy with the provisions for the Old Mass this year? I know that is a challenge, because, you know, once the black pass, everybody gets black. But were you happy with the provisions for the Old Mass?
I was happy with the provision for the Old Mass. Good. The disappointment is I was actually expecting to see more Old Mass. Okay. Yeah. But when I say the provision, so for example, there were discussions. I mean, we had a discussion with some of the Old Mass leaders. The whole idea that we were able to sensitize the public that, hey, you need a space on the canvas from Burns Point so that people can do it within a specific time, I think those allowances were well in place. Okay. But how well and how best they were utilized in terms of the number of bands that came out to take their rightful space, I think that's where they are.
But once the space is there, then that's something that can grow.
The space was there.
And yes. That's important.
And that's honest.
Let's move on to your thing. So Pan. Are you satisfied with the prominence of steel band in in the Spicemas 2023?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. So, for example, I would speak of it from different standpoints. First of all, let's look at the Children's Carnival Frolic. We had five bands participating at the Children's Carnival Frolic, and quite frankly, I was hoping that there'd be more of those bands to start, right? Secondly, for the senior National Panorama, we had 9 bands, and I know the conversation came up even yesterday when I was on another program. 5 bands, but you have 9 bands, but of those 9 bands, you have, let's say, 4 or 5 that seem to fit in one category, and the rest, like,
well, and the question is whether we should have, even if it's on one night, a large band and a small band competition. Because as the result were announced, and biases or not, what the judges said, the bands with the more players sound better than bands with fewer players. That's what the result said. The bands who were sponsored, I don't know if it had to do with number of pieces or others, placed on top compared to the others. And that seems to be unfair. So are we at a place where for the Panorama Championships, even if it is one night, one sitting, the same prize monies in terms of the total, but we redistribute to award a quote-unquote large band and a small band because they seem to be in 2 different competitions, as we see from the results year after year?
It's something that has to be addressed. So that conversation must be had with the Stable Association in terms of how we go forward. Because 2 things, well, I shouldn't say 2 things, but there are different ways it can be looked at. I think, for example, in some case, it almost, should I say, encourage mediocrity, meaning, you small, I will never be them big band. Why make any big move about it? But on the other hand, I think the small bands need to be stepping up and thinking a little different. Okay, these big bands, I want to kind of get to where they are. So it's 2 ways that we look at it. But with respect to how you categorize them, small band, medium-sized band, big band, to me, it's a little bit challenging in terms of the actual number of bands overall we have. Total bands we have is really 10.
And that's why I said single competition.
Yeah.
But based on, and you're the expert here, number of players and or number of pieces, a band can be categorized. Now, I don't expect Angel Harps to walk with 20 pieces because they want to dominate the small band competition.
I don't think
I don't believe so. But the idea, though, is that, again, I will defer to you as the expert. If we have a smaller number of pieces, can we get the same fullness of sound in order to impress the judges? I'm not saying we're not playing well. I'm not saying the arrangement is not a good arrangement. But are we able to get the fullness of the sound as well as the variety in the orchestra to compete with a band playing just as well, but with more instruments and more players?
You say, as an expert, quite honestly, I would say this to you. I listen to some of quote-unquote smaller bands. And this is no bias. In some cases, I love what I heard. What I think needs to happen, in other words, I'm making a point. I believe that some of the bands, even with the smaller numbers, I think with a better push, and in some cases with better arrangement, in my opinion, they could be winning Panorama. And this has to do with the quality of the sound, the quality of the arrangement. And it should not be dependent on just how big the band is. Because at the end of the day, what the judge is supposed to be listening for, or what the judge is supposed to be judging, is what's being heard. Not necessarily what they see. And I know it may sound a little bit compounding because, again, the bigger the band, the more powerful you could be hearing them. But likewise, the bigger the band, the more confusion there could be within it if the arrangement is not right. Which is why I'm saying even a small band with good arrangement could win Panorama.
Okay.
And I really think so.
And it has happened, but it's the oddball.
It's an
Rainbow
oddball.
City All Stars,
Yes.
and others is an oddball. Right? But let me ask you this. Is it therefore time for the SMC and or the Cultural Foundation or jointly to lead the charge in billing capacity for arrangers, and also to lead the charge in billing capacity for the adjudication of PAN and cadre now and skill set for PAN, because we may very well find that the adjudicators come with their own bias. As you said, they should be judging what they hear and not they see, but the results don't lie. Year after year we see the same type of results. Do we need to build local capacity and who may have a better appreciation for Grenada's reality, and therefore the playing field might be equalized?
And the answer to that is yes. And I'm glad you raised it, because the truth is it's one of the things I was going to address before leaving tonight. Generally speaking, I think the Ministry of Culture, the Grenada Cultural Foundation, and Spicemas, there need to be a greater synergy among these three bodies, because they all depend, one depend on the other. And let me explain that. The ministry should be the driving force to kind of dictate what should happen. The Cultural Foundation are supposed to be there, quote unquote, building the capacity. So, and you say steel band, but I'm going right back, whether it's mass bands, and having people learn to do the wire bending in schools, going to the villages and, you know, having people understand the importance of the traditional mass. How do you build the clogs? How do you build the mass? Get people involved in wanting to do it. Whether it is the Calypsonians, and again, I take the opportunity to say thanks to Teacher Ed. He's been doing a fantastic job. That's one person. But we need to have the capacity building throughout all, whether it's mass, pan, calypso. And it needs to happen. So if we come back and we zero in on the pan tuners, we're still in a serious deficit, no real pan tuner in Grenada.
Right.
So every time we need to have a pan that we consider a good sounding pan, we have to go out of Grenada to get that. The whole question of things like arrangers and arrangers workshop, these are things that I believe should be, from a standpoint, should be spearheaded by the Cultural Foundation, because it's about the capacity building. You have the bands in the outer parishes, and I'm going to say that, who need help in terms of the quality of the people who arrange for the bands, who need some form of assistance in terms of growing the band, getting it bigger. You're looking for both quantity and quality. And the truth is that they will not be able to do it on their own. And somebody got to be there to help push them. Now, the reason why I'm saying the ministry and I'm saying Cultural Foundation is because they are the ones that I think, from, as I understand it, should be building those capacity. Now, what happens after the capacity is built is that the event need to be held, the event being Spicemas, the product. And then you draw from those capacity building, which you, let's say the Cultural Foundation will hand over to you, and you put it on. But from what I see, it's not happening that way. And I'm not saying it cannot happen, but what I do know is that if it's going to be developed, if it's going to go forward, it needs to happen. And it needs to happen in that way. We need to see more of the steel band in schools. We need to see the mass band, more calypso taking place. It shouldn't be just in St. David's in the case of the calypso. It needs to be a broad spectrum throughout the island. And we need to be encouraging people, young people, the schools. We need to have more schools band, whether it's steel bands, mass band. I mean, there probably are a lot of complaint in terms of what's happening. But if we don't start with our young people and teaching them the right things the right way, then we will stand to suffer.
Would you say that the steel band movement lost out on an opportunity and continue to lose out on an opportunity by their absence on the roads Monday and Tuesday?
Yes. For example, I think as a sponsor, and I would say it like that, it is part of what I would like to see happen. Again, I know from a financial standpoint, it takes a lot more financially for bands to be able to be on the road, because they have to build specific road stands and things like that. So I will take the opportunity and pay the plug here one time. We are asking the corporate citizens to assist in areas like that. Sponsorship really helps to get the bands to a position where they can better serve the community, where they can, play a greater role in impacting the lives of the young people in the community, or in this case, in the schools. So if we have those programs going, if we have that kind of financial support in terms of sponsorship, I think it will help.
Let me ask you this, because I'm going now, because sometimes the sponsors are also in the audience. Yeah. Panorama had a wonderful turnout comparatively this year. That was good. But one would argue, in terms of the observation, Panorama seemed to be the only show in the stadium that was not produced. Bands were called on, and band number 1 played, and band number 2 played, and band number 3, and just before they came on, the song they were playing was played. But there was no real production. There was no customers care from the standpoint that patrons had to wait until the next band came on stage. There was no entertainment in between the bands, for example. In Soca Monarch, when you move from groovy to power, there was entertainment. Before the groovy came on, there was entertainment. In terms of the steel band competition, that did not exist. When the winner was announced, there wasn't a prize giving or an award, a trophy, or anything like that. And it seemed as though the steel band movement was treated less than how other competitions were treated. What would be your response to that?
Well, my response, it was unfortunate, because I will tell you, efforts were made in terms of the production. And I will backtrack a little bit, because there was a production in place. Was it followed? Did it happen? No. Because on the other hand, if you were one of the person on pay-per-view, you would see what the production was supposed to be like, or part thereof. It's something that we have to take responsibility for, but I hasten to say, if everything went as it was supposed to, what was experienced at the venue was supposed to be a good experience. Now, on the other hand, the people who experienced it, let's say on pay-per-view, they had a better experience.
Okay.
And I'm saying all of that, but at the same time, we have to be held accountable that it didn't happen. But yes, it was. It is something that I really expect to see great improvement in next year.
And that's a lead into my next question, is how do you capture and maintain the momentum in terms of the attendance that we saw? Because the steel band players were playing for the people in front of them. Yeah. They're not seeing the audience on pay-per-view, right? How do you harness the support that the Panorama received this year come 2024 and moving forward?
Oh, it's a tough one, but I can tell you the efforts will be made. Just to give you a synopsis, for example, right? What was planned that didn't happen is that between every time a band is going off and one is coming on, first of all, we were trying to have some live performances, and we had some challenges with that based on the setup of the stage and so. So what was done instead is to have recorded performances. And as I'm saying to you, it didn't happen because those performances were supposed to have been shown on the screen, and there were some technical challenges there that really was a blunder on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just segue into, because we're quickly running out of time.
Yeah.
Let me just segue into Calypso, but let's address the Children's Carnival Frolic. Two things. You gave your praises, and happy that we're giving Teacher Eddie his flowers now. He has given yeoman service to Junior Calypso in Grenada for decades, without a doubt. But let me ask this. I noticed 14 people in the finals. I observed that there were no preliminary or semi-finals. And having 14 artists perform at the end of a long day is what basically threw you out of whack. Why wasn't there a semi-final for the Junior Calypso?
Well, let me put it in total. The Children's Carnival Frolic we apologize that it went beyond that time. And again, we really started off on time at 11. But I think it's important to make the point here. There was such overwhelming interest in Trans-Carnival Frolic that in some cases, I wouldn't want to say it surpassed expectation because we expected things to be great. But from the onset, even with the bands that came, and I'm talking about the mass bands and traditional mass, and, the numbers really were a lot more, and not just the number of bands, but the size of the bands.
Right.
And that in itself started the whole process of, extending the time. As I said on another program, when a band turn up with a whole set of children
right.
and insist that, hey, we decide we're coming because it's happening, do you really turn them back? And the truth is that with children, you don't want to do something like that. And likewise, I was in conversation with teacher Eddie, and I know we try to keep it at that 11. And every time I talk to him, he's like, but Cess, the trainer here and the parents are upset that I'm not taking them. And eventually it reached to 14. Question might be say, well, what was the level of control? And again, we have to sit for that.
And the question is, why wasn't there a semi-final?
I spoke to him about some level of qualification to make the number smaller. But in his words, the number were not big enough for him to want to do that. So every time somebody came, but again, it's something that needs to be controlled. I guess the whole enthusiasm, both from the children's standpoint, and as he said to me, the parents on his back, and to some extent, I would say, him wanting to do this, which is something he has a passion for. I think that's what happened. But I think the lesson is quite clear. We need to work to ensure that the numbers are there. But having said all of that, part of what we may need to look at is for the Children's Carnival Frolic, do we need to have those three elements in one show? One way or another, the chances and the possibility of it being extended remains a risk factor.
Yeah.
So it's something we need to look at.
It is starting earlier or cutting part of the show, and that's a hard one because you'd want to be able to showcase whichever aspect, and you'd want to have an audience to do it.
Yeah.
And it's you have to decide which aspect can have the draw so that you can have two shows. But viewers, I don't want to get in trouble, and I know that we ought to have taken our second break by now, so I'll just pass it over so that we take our second break and we'll be right back.
Do you have muscular pain that no one can find a solution for? Are you tired of taking meds for joints and other pains? Hills and Valley Medicare Center on Grenville Street, St. George is here to help you heal. We will help you map a path to your full recovery. Visit us Monday to Saturday for a consultation with our on-site doctor, physiotherapist, and massage team. You will be glad you did. Our Medicare Center, a proud member of the Hills and Valley group of companies. On the hilltop or in the valley, we are with you wherever life takes you. Hills and Valley Pharmacy. Your health is our business.
Abood Store has the clothes for men who like to dress well. Abood Store has casual and dress shirts, dress pants, linen and stretch cotton shorts, vests, polos, waistcoats, blazers and suits. For casual, dressy and formal occasions, Abood Store caters for your needs. Abood Store is on St. John Street, St. George's. Call us on 440-2882 or message us on Facebook at MSF Abood Store.
Freedom is driven to pursue that passion that keeps you up at night and makes you smile in your sleep. Freedom is bold to embrace the possibilities that can open up your world and conquer new heights. Freedom is fabulous with bits and pieces that enhance the quality of your life. Freedom is what you do with the flexibility to change path or direction when you need to. Freedom breeds ambition and purpose while having loads of fun along the way. But most of all, freedom is well-deserved for the road traveled and the journey still to come. Unleash your freedom with Nexa Credit Union. Offer ends August 31st, 2023. Call us on 440-1354 or visit our website to pre-apply. Apply now. Freedom awaits.
RENDEC Community Partnership Initiative.
The classrooms that were refurbished as a result of this project really were not conducive to installing ICT into the classroom. Many of the windows were not functional. The security to the actual rooms themselves were insufficient. At the Maribor campus, the roof was also termite infested. The college is extremely appreciative of the contribution of Grenlick to this project to really enhance learning through the use of information and communications technology.
Carnival people are always accused of talking a lot, and I guess tonight is no exception. But you too can get your opportunity to weigh in by calling in. The telephone number will pop on your screen shortly, 440-1252. And we're speaking and reviewing Spicemas 2023. Cecil, are you happy with the songs that you heard for 2023?
Groovy, Calypso, extremely happy. I think both Groovy and Calypso is in a really good place. You know, starting from the prelims come down, it was really just riveting, if I may use that term. The more that I heard the Calypsos especially, you know, it sent a message that Calypso is really strong and alive.
Okay. We have our first caller. Let's give him a chance to wait. So good evening, caller. Welcome.
Good night to you all, gentlemen. Yeah, and I'm just making a little contribution. But over 2 years ago, I look after something on the carnage, right? Complaining about the big trucks. What I look at, the big trucks, that is what I'm talking about 2-3 years ago. They have to go right down by the treasury down there to turn. And the chaos for that is a big problem. What I had suggest to them, when you come down from Young Street where Coates is and you're making that turn there, you could go back to the tunnel, or you're coming straight down, or you're going up for Court Street. There's a wrong thing in the middle there. We have a light and some wires. Make a wrong paint around it, just the same circle on the pitch, and put all the arrows where you're going and where you have to turn. Put the same signs and that on a piece of iron with a ring, and you cast that thing into like a culvert. So when carnival time comes, you take a crane and you lift that thing from there where that circle is, and you put it on the sidewalk. So then now you have the circle painting wide there, it's like the wrong road, but that whole area there is clear for the trucks to turn right there and go back. That is one thing. Okay. Then another thing we can think of is the size of the truck. If we can cut it down or something else. Then the beautification of the carnage for the looking at the band, seeing how the bars around the carnage. Maybe we should talk to the boatmen. That is one of the things that's spoiling certain things out. When carnival, you all move out from there and go over to the fish market and park over there and then come back. Something like that. Then the steel band, no, I am wrong, steel band. Steel band have a lot of problems. The size of the band they're talking about in the 70s, those small bands, what we call in small bands, 60s and 70s, that was the size of the big bands. Right now, we're trying to go to competition with big bands as Trinidad. Okay, that we're not we don't say that's not good. So now what will should happen? We have 9 bands in the panorama. 4 band is sponsored and 5 band is unsponsored. That is a big problem because to bring a steel band, 1 band from the country area, outside area, need 4 trucks and 3 trucks to bring the band in town. Right. Then what I look at, some of the bands, they're not looking, let's say maybe the chief or the real band in charge of the band, they're not going in the stadium. That stage is not designed for the band. The band stage should have been closer to the audience. Now, a lot of us who went and look on the ground there, where that stage is, when the wind blows, it's taking the song of the pan straight down to the channel where you're exiting. So all the song is going out. Lots of people complaining. They can do something better. I see a situation where they can do something for the pan, for the stage, and all the patrons getting the loud sound.
All right,
but
thank you very much.
everybody want to do their own thing. But pan have a lot of problems. Sometimes if you want to get large bands, 2 of the small bands join and go to Panorama and make 1 big band and share the money if you will.
Let's have someone else give a contribution, but certainly your points taken re the mass on the carnage as well as the challenges with PAN. Yeah. Any responses specific or you?
No. I think what he said, I'm still trying to understand clearly the turning aspect, because I know in the past when some of these lads, trailer truck go across, they would go all the way over to quote unquote Nawasa and try to turn there. Mm-hmm. But I think the point he's making, though, which has value in it, is that something needs to be done either about the trucks or the road, and I don't think much can be done about the road, so we have to look at it. If not, as you said before, something has to be done with the route. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. You said Groovy as we were talking. We spoke of Groovy, and certainly the Calypso. Yeah. We spoke about the building of capacity with adjudications earlier on, so I'm not gonna go there. But what would you like to see, or how would you like to see the growth of our sound? Oh, we do have a next caller, so let's take the next caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
I just called to say that I know Eddie is the one. Teacher Eddie is the one who's actually happening with his group. But next year, when they were GUT, invested a lot of money in that youth Calypso program. And I just want to say there were other people involved. For example, one just died, Lincoln Robert. He died not too long ago in New York. But he had a group with Crocator, and they used to have a lot of kids teaching them how to sing Calypso. Just something that they didn't come on board, or it never happened, and Eddie is the one who just happens to be there. But it's not so much Eddie Summer. But these guys need to be recognized also, okay? Thank you. Good evening.
Understood and agreed. And it was a cadre, because there used to be junior calypsonians coming out of St. John as well, not just out of St. David. There was a group out of St. Andrew, if my memory serves me correctly, as well as St. Patrick. So it was a collaborative effort. But Teacher Eddie sold us on, and that's why the recognition was given. Yes. But those who paved the way likewise needs to be recognized. And I just mentioned the outer parishes. What type of collaboration is there, or are there active carnival development committees within the parishes?
There are carnival committees within the parish. In my opinion, they're not as active as they should be. Case in point, when they have the launch, we try to be there with them. And the truth is that we want to render support to them, but allow them to do what they think best for the parish. But what we have observed is that from an administrative standpoint in most cases, and even logistics, that they need a lot of support. So part of what I know is happening, I had some discussion with the chair, and we trying to see how from a ministry standpoint we can get some more resources so that we in terms of Spicemas could be in closer working relationship with them to help them to do what they're doing to improve. Because you see, for example, some of the launches and the condition in which they were done, and definitely that they need greater support, both financially and logistically.
So it wasn't part of the launches within the parishes, wasn't part of the SMC's rollout of Carnival?
No, not really. What we do, we meet with them, we have the discussion, they decide when they will have the launch, and what they will do. And they would invite us to come do some presentation or so. But what we are saying, we are realizing that it needs to be more than that. It really needs to be more than that.
I'm going to relate two things. This year we heard that there was a tie for Road March and people were surprised. The question was, where did this judging take place? Was the adjudication, where did the adjudication for a Road March take place?
It took place primarily in St. George's and different places in St. George's. What was done is that in areas where you had any type of judging, let's say like for Monday night mass, that would have been considered. But because they weren't judging for, let's say, the fancy mass and so, we had specific areas where people were asked to go, and in some cases we had people actually roving. So that's how it was done. I know someone asked a question about considering the outer parish, but not much of that was considered.
Okay, I'll come back to that, but we have another caller online. Good evening, caller, and welcome.
Hello, good evening. Hi, good evening. As a part mom, I've been to the two pan shows. But I remember a couple of years ago when Ricardo King Douglas was conducting the panorama, and while the pans was setting up, we had like this production, it was entertainment, it was really nice. If we could get back something like that, that would be really nice. One of my other things is the Queen. Is it possible that, I know in the past they used to be on the road parading after they wear their costume, like the night of Queen show, Carnival Monday and Tuesday they're on the road parading. We don't see that anymore. Can we get that back in place? That would be really nice. That would be part of our culture. That would be something that people would love to see. That would be really interesting. Just my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those. I think we're familiar with the Ricardo King Douglas production. Right? So we were very familiar with that model. And back in the days with the Queen shows. Well, the Queen contestants being part of Carnival.
And I will tell you, Colin, efforts were made to have that this year. Some of the queens, they were in other bands, a few of them were playing, but the arrangement was made. I dare say that there seemed to have been some hitches in terms of how the messages were relayed. I mean, not going into the specifics, but I think that there was some fallout in terms of the understanding. It was set up front that it's going to happen, but in terms of relaying the message, making sure that people remember it's going to happen, because we had the safari ready, the safari truck ready. We reach out to them in terms of the costumes or being dressed and being paraded on the safari, but it didn't come true.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just get back to the collaboration or weakened collaborations from what you're saying between the SMC and the parish committees and the adjudication of the road march. Because if it is a national road march and not a St. George's road march, then you realize that some folks had some issues with the overall results. That was one question. And why is it, if we do not pull songs from the outer parishes, are there carnival-like activities in the outer parishes? If the activities are recognized, then it should be recognized, which is be inclusive of feeding into what is dubbed the road march for the given year. But we seem to have had a case where we have sanctioned activities in the various parishes. CDC ABC is putting on full carnivals, as they traditionally do St. John, St. Mark, St. John and St. Patrick in particular. But when it comes to something like the adjudication of the road march, which is a national road march, it took place only in St. George. Is this something that we can see adjusted so that it is more reflective of what is played nationally? Is this, well, yes, just that's just the question.
And to answer you, yes, it should be adjusted. And I would sit and I would tell you, I'd be quite honest about this. If I tell you I'm very clear, because it's something I try finding out, and in terms of the clarity of exactly what should be happening, I think for myself that's something that needs to be homework for me. Okay. Because when I ask a question, I don't think I got clarity in terms of what should be happening considering the other parishes. For some it seemed that, and maybe I was wrong in understanding it, but it seems that for a few years now, maybe that's how it was done. Okay. I may be wrong. Mm-hmm. So as I said, it's something I personally have to do some homework on. Okay. Yeah?
All right. I'm told that we do have a last caller online, so good evening, caller. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you. I want to say kudos to Spicemas Corporation and to all of those people involved and those who work behind the scenes to make it the success that it was. I really do hope, though, that we would bring back the old mass, the traditional old mass on the coronage. Bring it back to the days when we go down after 5 and, so much has happened, so much is happening that, we need to have that old mass where we engage Cafe Bull and others that, traditionally was involved in the old mass. I really look forward to that day on the coronage. For whatever reason, the Rotary Club didn't have the old mass this year down at the Trade Center or the Youth Center, but I look forward to the day when we will have the old mass on the streets again. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you very much.
So I want to plug in on that because I need to do it. I tell you what, I had a number of discussions with Cafe Bull, and he had plenty of placards. The problem stems again back to part of what I said. Most of the people who played with him and continue to play with him are aged people. Mm-hmm. We need to be encouraging the young people, which is why I made mention of the schools being involved. I remember some years ago seeing St. Joseph Convent had, a number of the students with a placard playing Old Mass. But that's part of where the challenge lies. When I look at Mr. Hall is 90. Mr. Hall was still playing Old Mass on the road again this year. Mm-hmm. But those are some of the things that happened. So yes, caller, Cafe Bull was engaged, and he loved to have more people playing, but the personnel just were not there. Okay. Okay. So he told me he have a lot of placards there, but the people to use them, play them, yeah.
All right. I'm just going to go some quick things now. We still have 2 Calypso associations, but no real 10 season. How are we going to address that? How can we get these 10s to have more than 2 shows, opening night, judging night, and that's it? How do we move towards having a tent structure that would help to build the cadre of Calypsonians?
I think for most part, apart from financial support and sponsorship, and I'll tell you why I'm saying that. Running the tents and having shows, it's something that costs for some serious money, especially in the era we are in now. I mean, we're talking about the kind of money you need to put out to be paying first and foremost the musicians. That's where the challenge lies. So I must say we ended up with 4 tents, and it have you wondering. To me, Calypso is not Calypso if you don't have it starting from in the tent. I guess as a child growing up, going to the Calypso tents, and you get the feel and the vibes from there. I mean, back in St. Paul's when we have like We Tent and those things as a child, you don't miss it. Mm-hmm. And what it does, it gives you that natural build-up. And there are a series of shows. But you have now, I look at Calypso bags. And no disrespect to the other tents, but when you see what Calypso Bad is, what they are doing there in their tent, you think that there should be some kind of replicated efforts for the other 210s. And I said the other 210s because Calypso Bar, based on the numbers, based on the quality of Calypsonians they have there, they actually run like 210s because they have the numbers. And the other 210s, it's not quite up to that same part.
Let's stick with Calypso because we quickly run out of time. Calypso final, will it be on Thursday night in 2024? Question 1. Will it be in St. Andrew in 2024? Question 2.
I don't know. Working on. It's work in progress. But what I know, I could tell you because I know most of these questions come. What it's leading to is what's going to happen on Sunday night. There will be a demarche grant. How it's going to be, it's not certain, but it's something we are discussing. And when I say that, it could be a case that the Calypsos return on demarche grant, or it could be that the Calypso continue on the Thursday, but the demarche grant is being held, and maybe you have all the finalists, whether it's from Soca, from Calypso, appearing there together with the king and queen of the bands. So that is not certain how it's going to be, where it's going to be, but we know there's going to be a demarche grant.
There's been bemoaning of the filth left along the route after Monday and Tuesday. Are we going to move into zoning, numbering of vending stations, and more importantly, collecting a cleanup deposit so that we don't have to, we mean the people of Grenada and SMC don't have to pay to pick up the debris thereafter?
The answer to that is yes, but I think we need to even go a step further. But before we go a step further, let me take what you're asking first. Efforts were made to try to collect more from vendors, and they're crying out. And we have to be mindful of that. But the truth is that the kind of monies it costs us at SMC, and in some cases government to do the cleaning, it's kind of ridiculous. It is a large sum of money. Maybe where we should be looking, and it is part of what, from where I sit, I'm looking at, and I'm hoping we could get some assistance from some partner somewhere. I think we need to reach a stage where we as SMC can have some prefab type of boots, some that look decent enough in terms of the aesthetic and everything. We could put these down, rent them, and then just collapse them and pick them up. That is where I would really like to see us go.
Good. Would we also, in the same vein, have SMC owning bleachers that can go along the route, whether it's for free or whether it's a small charge?
Work in progress. But I think, first and foremost, when we look at the situation with for vending, I think as it is now, the priority will be to try to get those prefab type boots, and I really hoping we can get that done and get that done in quick order.
Okay. My final question, and then you can just roll into your closing comments, was Spicemas 2023 profitable for SMC? I know the answer for Grenada, for SMC.
At this stage, it's kind of challenging to say. I can tell you thus far, we have been able to collect some funds, and I'm saying some funds, but we are not at that stage where we can give a definitive answer in terms of the figures. I could tell you, for example, we got $1 million from NLA. We got another $1 million from government, which is split in two parts, 800 for the Carnival account, 200 for administrative matters. In terms of sponsorship, it was not as great as we'd like it to be. We probably collect another 300,000 in that regard.
That was pay-per-view.
Yeah, pay-per-view. Hopefully, we could have what I would consider a substantial collection there. From the figures that I have gathered from talking to the people who we're working with, that could be in excess of maybe a 200,000. And if we get that, that would be good. So it's not all yet finalized. I mean, we look at the sales coming through from Go to Fed. That was like a 369,000. And I'm not afraid to give the public the figures because
it is a people's business.
It is a people's business. So, and even when you talk about the pay-per-view, I will take the opportunity to say, I know some people were asking why, when you want the local fans to be able to take in some of it locally. But the truth is, with the crunch and with what's happening, being able to pay bills thereafter, efforts must be made to raise funds in some way. I'm not saying it's going to be that way forever. Who knows? Maybe if something come on stream where we have the festival tax and we see other things that can happen, maybe that will free up. But having said all of that, these are some of the avenues that we try to generate, and the figures are looking good thus far.
Okay.
They're looking good.
Your closing comments.
Well, as the last caller stated, I think overall Spicemas 2023 was a resounding success. For, as I indicated, some of the measuring sticks that we put in place, it may not turn out to be as good as we want it to be financially, but I think overall, considering everything else, the numbers, the participation, the enthusiasm that was there, the whole quest for wanting more, the fact that people came and already vouching to come back, I think in general it was a success. The success story, we'll have to roll it over into 2024, see what happens. What will 2024 bring? It's left to be seen. But what I can tell you, the aim is that whatever we do, it should be enhancing what happened in 2023.
So Cecil Noel, Chief Executive Officer of Spicemas Corporation, congratulations on year one as CEO. Very well done. I know it's a thankless job,
it is.
But you survived year one, and looking forward to greater things moving forward.
Yes.
And to you, our viewers and listeners, thank you for joining us on the August 21st edition, and I'm certainly looking forward to being with you again in 6 days, 22.5 hours. Good evening and Godspeed.